Have you ever wanted something so badly that you convinced yourself it would finally make you happy? A better job, a bigger house, more money, more status. The kind of life that makes everyone else look at you and think they made it. But what if the thing you desire most becomes the very thing that destroys your peace? Tonight's story begins with a woman who wanted beauty, luxury, admiration, and a place among the wealthy. She wasn't asking for power. She wasn't asking for fame. She simply wanted the life she believed she deserved. And for one magical evening, she got exactly what she wanted. The tragedy is what happened afterward, because one missing necklace would change everything. And by the time the truth finally came out, it would already be too late. Some stories entertain us. Others stay with us long after they are over. This is one of those stories. I finished this story recently, and what stayed with me wasn't the twist at the end. It was how painfully human the characters felt, their hopes, their insecurities, their mistakes. The kind of mistakes any of us could make when we are chasing a life we think will finally make us feel complete. If you enjoy stories that stay with you long after they end, consider subscribing. There's a lot more coming. All right, let's begin. In 19th century Paris lived a woman named Mathilde Loisel. On paper, her life wasn't terrible. She had a husband who cared about her, a roof over her head, food on the table, stability, but in her mind, it wasn't enough. Every day she woke up feeling as though destiny had made a terrible mistake. She believed she had been born for something greater, something more beautiful, more elegant, more luxurious. When she looked around her modest apartment, she didn't see shelter. She saw disappointment. The faded walls felt like insults. The worn furniture felt like reminders of a life she never wanted. Every object seemed to whisper the same cruel message: this is all you'll ever have. Meanwhile, her imagination lived somewhere else entirely. In grand salons glowing with candlelight, in lavish mansions filled with priceless treasures, among wealthy guests dressed in silk and diamonds. In those dreams, she wasn't overlooked. She wasn't ordinary. She was admired, desired, important, and every time reality pulled her back, the fall hurt even more. Looking back, this is where everything begins, not with a necklace, not with a lie, but with dissatisfaction. Quiet feeling that what you have isn't enough. And that feeling can be far more dangerous than people realize. Mathilde had once known a wealthy woman named Madame Forestier, an old friend, someone who possessed the kind of life Mathilde dreamed about, but visiting her became unbearable. Each visit left her feeling poorer than before, so eventually she stopped going, not because she disliked her friend, because she couldn't stand the comparison. Then one evening, everything changed. Her husband arrived home carrying an envelope. He looked excited, proud, victorious, the way someone looks when they've managed to bring home wonderful news. Inside was an invitation, a prestigious ball hosted by the ministry, an event attended by influential people throughout Paris. For her husband, it was a rare opportunity. For Mathilde, it should have been a dream come true, but instead of joy, she became upset, because she immediately realized something: she had nothing worthy to wear. No elegant gown, no jewelry, no symbols of status. In her mind, attending the ball while looking ordinary would be worse than not attending at all. Her husband was stunned. He had worked hard to secure the invitation, but seeing her tears, he gave in. The money he'd been saving for himself, money meant for a personal dream, was handed over so she could buy a dress. And to his credit, he did it without resentment. Sometimes the quiet sacrifices people make for those they love go unnoticed. This is one of those moments. Soon, Mathilde had a beautiful dress, but now another problem appeared. No jewelry. Without it she felt incomplete, invisible. Then her husband suggested something simple. Why not borrow jewelry from Madame Forestier? The idea struck like lightning, of course. Why hadn't she thought of that? The next day she visited her friend. Madame Forestier welcomed her warmly and opened a jewelry case. Inside were treasures, bracelets, pearls, beautiful ornaments. Mathilde admired them all. Then she saw it, a diamond necklace. The moment she laid eyes on it, everything else disappeared. It sparkled with impossible beauty, elegant, sophisticated, perfect. She asked if she could borrow it. Her friend agreed immediately. And just like that, Mathilde left with what she believed was the final piece of her transformation. The night of the ball arrived, and for the first time in a very long time, Mathilde felt alive. She entered the ballroom radiant, confident, magnificent. People noticed her instantly. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Men wanted introductions. Important guests wanted to dance with her. Even powerful officials took notice. For one unforgettable evening, she became the woman she had always imagined herself to be. Admired, celebrated, desired. Everything she had dreamed about seemed real. And perhaps that's what makes this part of the story so heartbreaking, because happiness built entirely on appearances can vanish in an instant. The night slipped by like a beautiful dream. Music echoed through the halls. Laughter filled the air. Mathilde danced until exhaustion and joy became indistinguishable. Eventually, sometime near dawn, and her husband left. The contrast was immediate. The glamour was gone. Reality returned. Her husband wrapped her in modest clothing to protect her from the cold. Compared to the expensive furs worn by wealthy women nearby, the difference was impossible to miss. Embarrassed, Mathilde hurried away. The couple struggled to find transportation. The streets were cold and nearly empty. Finally, they found a carriage and returned home. The evening was over, or so they thought. Back in her apartment, Mathilde stood before a mirror one final time. She wanted to admire herself, to relive the magic. Just once more, then she froze. The necklace was gone. At first it didn't seem possible. Surely it had slipped somewhere. Perhaps it was caught in her dress. Perhaps it had fallen into a pocket. Perhaps no, it was gone. The panic arrived instantly. Her husband searched. She searched every corner, every piece of clothing. Nothing. The necklace had vanished. And suddenly the most wonderful night of her life became the beginning of a nightmare. Her husband spent hours retracing their route through Paris. No necklace. Police reports were filed. Rewards were offered. Cab companies were contacted. Still nothing. Days passed. Hope disappeared. At last they faced a terrifying reality. The necklace had to be replaced. They searched jewelry stores throughout the city. Eventually they found one that looked identical. The price nearly destroyed them. It cost far more money than they possessed, but they had no choice. They borrowed and borrowed again, then borrowed even more. Friends, lenders, creditors, anyone willing to help. Debt piled upon debt. Promises upon promises, all to purchase a replacement necklace and return it before anyone discovered the truth. And somehow, it worked. Madame Forestier accepted the necklace without question. The secret remained hidden, but now a new chapter began. The chapter that truly defines this story, because the price of that necklace would consume the next 10 years of their lives. Their servant was dismissed. Their home was abandoned. They moved into a tiny attic apartment. Mathilde, who once dreamed of luxury, now spent her days performing exhausting labor, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, carrying water, negotiating over every coin, counting every expense. Nothing came easily, not anymore. Meanwhile, her husband worked relentlessly, days, evenings, late nights. Every waking hour became a battle against debt. Year after year, the burden never seemed to end, and slowly, the woman who once dazzled a ballroom began to disappear. Her beauty faded beneath hardship. Her hands became rough. Her face aged. Her dreams grew quieter. life had changed her. This is the moment in the story that stayed with me the longest, because suffering doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives one day at a time. A little exhaustion, a little sacrifice, a little regret, until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself. 10 years passed. Eventually every debt was paid, every loan settled, every obligation fulfilled. The burden was finally gone. One Sunday afternoon, Mathilde was walking through Paris when she spotted a familiar face. Madame Forestier, still elegant, still youthful, still beautiful. Mathilde hesitated, then approached. At first, her old friend didn't even recognize her. The years had changed Mathilde that much. When she finally revealed who she was, shock crossed Madame Forestier's face. And for the first time in a decade, Mathilde told the truth. She confessed everything: the lost necklace, the replacement, the crushing debt, the years of poverty, the sacrifices, the suffering, all of it. And when she finished, she seemed almost proud. Proud that she had endured, proud that she had paid her debt honestly, proud that the nightmare was finally over. Madame Forestier stared at her in disbelief. Then she took Mathilde's hands and revealed the truth. The original necklace was not made of diamonds, it was imitation jewelry, a fake, worth only a fraction of what Mathilde had spent replacing it. The necklace that had stolen 10 years of her life was never truly valuable at all. And just like that, everything changed. Again, the twist is unforgettable, but the true power of this story lies deeper than its ending. Because the necklace isn't really about jewelry. It's about illusion. It's about the gap between who we are and who we wish we were. It's about the danger of believing that our worth depends on appearances. Mathilde spent years longing for a life that wasn't hers, and in chasing that image, she lost something far more valuable than money. She lost time, 10 years, years she could never get back. Yet there's another lesson here too, because despite everything she endured, she suffered, she adapted, she survived. And sometimes that's the most human thing of all. The tragedy isn't simply that she lost the necklace. The tragedy is that she never realized the value of what she already had until it was gone. And honestly, that's a lesson many of us are still learning. If this story left you thinking, you're not alone. Some stories end when the final page is turned. Others continue living in our minds long afterward. This is one of those stories. If you enjoyed this journey, consider subscribing to Pulse Loaded. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.